This is Jay or Jared, and I am a graduate at Alliant International University, going to get my master's in marriage and family therapy, and I specialize in collaborative language systems, which focuses on dialogue and how that kind of reveals or unveils the human process. Today, I'm going to be looking at a scene in the movie Harry Met Sally, very classic movie, in which the characters kind of get into a quarrel after Harry sees his ex-wife at a store. Let's break it down.
You don't like my bar stools? Harry, come on. Someone has to be on my side.
I'm on your side. I'm just trying to help you have good taste.
I have good taste.
Everybody thinks they have good taste and a sense of humor, but they couldn't possibly.
All right, so this is not really kind of the point of the scene, which is kind of like the background dialogue in which Harry's friend and Harry's friend's girlfriend are discussing about items that they want to have in their apartment or their home that they're living in. And Harry's friend is saying, hey, like, I want your opinion on this because I feel like you're going to be on my side. And he's already kind of setting some grounds on, whose side is on which. And so that kind of creates some sort of division.
Good taste.
You know, it's funny. We started out like this, Ellen and I. We had blank walls, we hung things, we picked out tiles together. Then you know what happens? 6 years later, you find yourself singing Surrey with a fringe on top in front of
Kind
Ira!
of like the beginning of Harry's monologue on equity in a relationship. Not even that. Of course, Harry's really hurt from the past scene in which he sees his ex wife. So much of his monologue is kind of filled with this resentment, this anger towards, his ex-wife, or maybe just the situation that, he was in. And so his experience from that is obviously bleeding into, his opinion on his friend's experience with trying to decide what items to keep with his with his current girlfriend in the place that they're living in.
Do we have to talk about this right now?
Yes, I think that right now actually is the perfect time to talk about this because I want our friends to benefit from the wisdom of my experience.
So we see
Right now-
here that Sally, the blonde girl in the movie, or in the scene, I don't know, necessarily tries to kind of diffuse the situation with Harry, because, when she went up to Harry, she doesn't really ask him to, like, hey, let's talk about this outside, or hey, are you okay? It's mostly like, do we have to do this right now? So I think it's not really an invitation to converse about his feelings. It's not really, asking how he is. It's mostly just kind of questioning the timing of his anger and frustration, which kind of perfectly coincides with, the scene, because his friend and his friend's girlfriend are kind of talking about, their relationship, besides just, the items that they want to have in their living space. But I think, if you wanted to kind of diffuse the situation, it would just be like, hey, Harry, like, are you okay? Of course, he's angry, not because of anybody else, but his experience. And so I'm not trying to, like, invalidate Sally's attempts to diffuse the situation. It's just that if there was a different way to do it, it would just be like, hey, are you okay? Like, what's going on? Do you want to talk outside?
I know, I shouldn't have done it.
Harry, you're gonna have to try and find a way of not expressing every feeling that you have every moment that you have them.
All right, so Harry in this scene's like, I know, I shouldn't have done it, which kind of just means to me that he's already assuming what Sally might say. Obviously, he just left the room in that state where there's no repair at all, because he's just said what he needed to say and then just left. So there wasn't any room for a follow-up question or follow-up statement from any of the other parties involved. He just left. Sally follows, and when they make it outside, he's like, I know what you're gonna say. You're gonna talk about what I just did, and I apologize for it. And that could have been an opportunity for Sally to be like, you know what? Yeah, you're definitely right. You know, you could have done something a little bit different. But instead of just maybe validating what Harry was saying, she kind of was like, there's a right time and a wrong time to express your anger, which is somewhat true and should be validated as well, in my opinion. But I think just not the way that it was said, but just the way that it was following up to Harry, it just seemed that there was not an understanding of where both sides are. Of course, Harry just freaking just let out his anger, and then Sally was just, to me, looked kind of annoyed by it, which is understandable. But then when Harry was saying, you're right, I shouldn't have done that, which is correct, right? I think he shouldn't have done that. Sally was like, there's a right time, wrong place, which is also correct, but I think in a way to kind of still, diffuse the situation, it would just be validating what Harry said and be like, okay, you're right. I'm glad that you are taking responsibility for what you just did.
Oh, really?
Yes. There are times and places for things.
Well, the next time you're giving a lecture series on social graces, would you let me know? Because I'll sign up.
Hey, you don't have to take your anger out on me.
Oh, I think I'm entitled to throw a little anger your way, especially when I'm being told how to live my life by Miss Hospital Corners.
Okay, well, before I kind of get into this scene, it's not helpful for anybody to, call somebody a name, and also a name that kind of represents someone that, of course, deals with a lot of death, okay, hospital corner. But I think the messaging that Harry intended is deeper than that. It's just saying, Sally, you have no feelings, Sally. Of course, it's always good to validate, someone's pain. Harry was in a lot of pain. He just saw his ex-wife with, the person that she chose over him. So, that pain is very valid. But when Sally attempted to kind of, let him know that, hey, I'm with you, but also what you did over there, there's a wrong time and a good time to do that. And Harry did not take that lightly. Obviously, he was mad about it. But then, instead of maybe validating what Sally said about, you're right, these are just my emotions, and this is my way of expressing it, and I am sorry for that. He just totally just took that out on Sally. And, of course, Sally had every right to say, hey, what's going on? That's not fair. Don't take your anger out on me. And Harry just, feeling in pain and feeling threatened by the whole situation regarding his ex-wife, called Sally a name. He basically just told her that, she has no feelings, and don't lecture him, because I think when someone lectures you, you kind of perceive that person who's lecturing you, in my opinion, as the authority figure, because it's about control, right, in the situation. Sally telling Harry, hey, there's a right time and a wrong place to do that. Wrong time to do that. And so, at the end of the scene, Harry is just full of pain and has contempt towards Sally at this moment and calls her a mean name.
What's that supposed to mean?
I mean, nothing bothers you. You never get upset about anything.
Okay, so we see Sally doing something that I really am fond of, which is kind of like asking questions to generate conversation, kind of understanding what the deeper meaning of what someone said. And she was like, what do you mean by Miss Hospital Corners? And that just kind of reveals Harry's, reasoning for calling her that, which is, you have no feeling. And that's pretty harsh, actually. That's really harsh. And so, I think that was a cool moment on Sally's end, just asking Harry, like, what do you mean by that? What do you mean by that?
Don't be ridiculous.
What? You never get upset about Joe. I never see that back up on you. How is that possible? Don't you experience any feelings of loss?
Okay, so what Harry did was that he basically invited Joe into the conversation. If you haven't seen the movie, basically in the beginning of the film, Sally is in a relationship with this guy named Joe, and they have this long relationship, and unfortunately, they break up. And so, you know, throughout the movie in which she is single and not seeing Joe, there's no really like major signs of her experiencing loss in a way that is similar to Harry, you know, Harry's loss in which he's angry, or also maybe like the meta narrative of that when you lose something, you should at least, you know, have some repercussions of like maybe feeling sad, feeling lonely. But she was totally cool with it, you know, which is also a valid way of experiencing loss, but maybe not the natural way of experiencing loss. And so, you know, Harry uses that as a way of justifying his claim that Sally, you know, doesn't experience any feelings, which is really harsh. And I just feel like, you know, on Harry's end, he could have done a better job of, you know, of not maybe just adding in Joe. But again, that also kind of shows the shared knowledge that Sally and Harry have, because they both know Joe, you know. And Harry invites that, you know, and Harry and Sally understands what Harry is saying, that okay, you see that I'm not really experiencing loss the same way that you do.
I don't have to take this crap from you.
If you're so over Joe, why aren't you seeing anyone?
I see people!
See people. Have you slept with one person since you broke up with Joe?
So Harry's worldview about getting over somebody is pretty highlighted in this scene, because he's saying, okay, have you, because you're talking to Sally, he's like, okay, if you say that you're over Joe, have you slept with anybody? You know, which is interesting, but also kind of just shows you that this is Harry's perspective. If you're over somebody, then you should be able to date somebody, you should be able to sleep with somebody. And obviously, it looks like Sally doesn't agree with that premise. But that's basically what the scene highlights.
What the hell does that have to do with anything? That will prove I'm over Joe because I fucked somebody? Harry, you're gonna have to move back to New Jersey because you slept with everybody in New York, and I don't see that turning Helen into a faint memory for you. Besides, I will make love to somebody when it is making love, not the way you do it like you're out for revenge or something.
So Sally, you know, she's merely just defending herself at this point, just because Harry's been accusatory about, you know, the way that Sally should feel, or even act, you know, after loss. And so I think Sally has every right to, and also I think it's kind of in our innate nature, if that makes sense, to kind of defend ourselves when someone attacks us, you know, whether that's out of retaliation or just out of, you know, keeping ourselves safe. Sally does that, you know, she's basically defending herself from, you know, Harry's premise that, you know, she has no feelings because she doesn't sleep with anybody. He hasn't seen her cry over Joe before. So these are really, you know, big claims that, you know, Harry is spewing at Sally. But Sally basically just says, hey, you know, just because I don't sleep with anybody doesn't mean that, you know, I'm grieving. People grieve differently. And then also Sally was just kind of being accusatory towards Harry, because I think Harry kind of set the tone throughout this whole conversation of just being angry and having contempt towards the other person. She was like, you need to move out of New York. You need to go to New Jersey because you basically slept with everybody in New York. And then also, if being over somebody means I'm, you know, if dating somebody and sleeping with somebody means that I'm over somebody, then how come you're not over Helen? Because you slept with a lot of people. So she's basically taking Harry's claim and then kind of saying how that is not applying to him because he's been sleeping with people, but obviously he's not over Helen. Or, I mean, maybe he is, but he's getting this big reaction after seeing Helen, his ex-wife. And so that's basically what the scene is.
Are you finished now?
Yes.
Can I say something?
Yes.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
So I kind of like how Harry just asks, Sally if she's finished. And I think he comes from a position of, not being accusatory anymore, but rather being in a position of, hey, I'm here, I'm listening to you, and if you're not finished, please continue, and if you are, then I'm gonna say what I need to say. And although I don't think you can really rescue anybody in this moment just because a lot of things have been said, I think this was probably a fast way to end the conversation, but also kind of end it in a note where both parties are in agreement with the ending of the conversation, which is, Harry asking, are you done? And then, are you okay if I say what I need to say? And Sally's like, yes, I agree with that. And sure, please say what you need to say. And Harry apologizes. And they both hug and they both embrace. I think indicating that, there is, a shared resolve with the conversation, even though it was harsh. Alright, so that's the end of this episode. I really appreciate you sticking through it. Hopefully that you took away some things from this episode, and then also if there's also if there's new perspectives, new findings that you yourself have discovered while listening to this, please comment below. I love being a student, and so if there's anything that I can learn, anything that you feel like you can teach me, please feel free to comment. I always welcome it. All right, bye.